On a spacecraft, a machine opens a sleeping unit to awaken Ryland from a medically induced coma. The ship's AI, Mary, asks him some questions to check his state of mind, but it turns out that Ryland is amnesiac and therefore terrified. He gets off the table and desperately escapes from the robot arm, making his way through the ship in search of other people. When he finally finds a person, he's horrified to discover they're dead. Ryland keeps wandering around the ship and wonders, where is he? Eventually, he finds a window and finally understands he's in space. He also realizes that he can recognize the different machines, which means he's a scientist. In the next room, he finds huge screens that play clips from beautiful places on Earth. After he finds clean clothes, Mary asks him to film a daily diary, but he asks for the captain instead. So Mary has to explain that he's the only survivor from the crew. He tells Mary to take him back, but she doesn't recognize that command. Looking at a screen, Ryland sees the sun and thinks he's still in the solar system, so he wants to send a message to Earth. However, Mary explains that the transmission would take almost 12 years. A very confused Ryland checks the map and realizes he's looking at a different sun. Afterward, he checks on the fuel and notices it's low. Using all the information on the screen, he does the math and concludes he's 113.8 years away from Earth. Suddenly, he has a headache, and some memories come back to him. He was a molecular biologist and always kept up with the news about the ArcLight probe, which was investigating something called the Petrova line. The images captured by this probe revealed that the sun was dimming. Ryland worked as a middle school teacher, so his students had lots of questions about this news. He explained that the Petrova line was an infrared line from the sun to Venus that was slowly dimming the sun. In the next 30 years, the Earth would start to get colder. The kid panicked because they heard that this could kill all life on the planet, but Ryland assured them that the brightest minds were already working on a solution. In the present, Ryland shaves his beard and checks the supplies to find some vodka, so he gets drunk and has a snack. When he looks at the crew's belongings, he remembers befriending them. He uses some of their clothes to make a doll and dance with it, pretending he isn't so lonely. On a whiteboard, he starts taking notes to try to figure out who he is, and soon another memory hits his mind. One day after class, he was approached by Eva, the head of the Petrova team. She read his paper, in which he declared water wasn't needed for life, and came to ask for his help, so Ryland reminded her that he was fired for what he wrote. However, Eva knew he actually was fired because he insulted a superior, and since then, nobody wanted him around. Ryland tried to get away from her, but Eva followed him and revealed that the probe took from the line survived on the sun's surface, so his water theory could be right. Ryland agreed to go with them after they confirmed that the sun was dying. In a lab, Ryland ran some tests on the samples while important foreign leaders watched. The samples could move, but that didn't mean they were alive, and they were so dark it was impossible to look inside them. Ryland kept trying different techniques until he managed to lighten them, and he confirmed they were small alien cells. This test killed the cell, but that meant he could find out what it was made of. After some more tests, he discovered these cells were mostly made of water, which caused him to throw things around in frustration because it meant his theory was wrong. The cells radiated a lot of infrared light when they moved, and their waves matched the Petrova line's frequency. They consumed the solar energy and expelled it to move. Afterward, Eva told Ryland to go home because she had other scientists to call. However, he was now invested, and he insisted he wanted to help the world, so Eva agreed to let him keep 3 cells for more testing. Ryland wondered why the cells went to Venus and skipped Mercury. Getting some ideas for a test, he went to a hardware store and bought a bunch of stuff. Inside a big box, he put a smaller box that would emit the same infrared light as Venus's atmosphere. If the cells moved toward it, it meant they needed carbon dioxide. After the box was sealed, Ryland connected the light, and the cells immediately disappeared from the dish. It confirmed the theory, but it also meant his 3 cells were loose in the box. If they opened it, they would escape by running toward the next source of light. With the help of some guards, Ryland sealed the lab with him and the box inside. Then the lights were turned off, and Ryland opened the box again. He quickly found the three original cells thanks to their glowing, and to his shock, there was also a fourth one. This meant the cells needed both sunlight and carbon dioxide to reproduce, which was why they went to Venus. After putting them all in a dish, the lights were turned on, and Ryland called Eva with the big news. Afterward, the military picked up Ryland in a jet, and he panicked so hard at the speed that he had to take sleeping medicine. He later woke up on an aircraft carrier and threw up as soon he got off the jet. Eve immediately introduced him to a team of the world's most important scientists and leaders, although he wasn't able to answer every question. The team confirmed they reproduced his experiment, and the results were the same. They decided to name this new organism astrophage, and they wanted to make 2 million kilos of it. Ryland didn't understand why they wanted so many, so Eve granted him access to all the secrets behind Project Hail Mary. It turned out our sun wasn't the only dying star. This had been happening all over the universe, and so far, only one star hadn't been infected. Tau Ceti, which was 11.9 light-years away from Earth. They didn't know why Tau Ceti was immune, so the plan was to send a spacecraft to find out. They needed enough fuel for such a long trip, and the astrophage could be that fuel, if they could make 2 million kilos. Ryland pointed out that so much astrophage could blow up California, so Eva explained that was why they were on a ship in the middle of the ocean. All this fuel would still only be good for a one-way trip, so the results would be sent back to Earth in probes, and the astronauts would die in space. They would be in a coma for most of the trip, and they only needed 3: a pilot, an engineer, and a scientist. The chances of the plan working were extremely low, which was why it was named after the expression Hail Mary. After regaining all these memories, Ryland finishes cutting his hair and dresses properly. He also checks on the crew again and grieves for his friends. After cleaning up the bodies, he puts their photographs in their pockets and gives a speech to thank them for their sacrifice. As he cries, Ryland promises to do his best to finish the mission. Then, he ejects the bodies into space. Sometime later, Mary informs Ryland that they're getting close to Tau Ceti, so the engines are turned off. As soon as the spacecraft enters Tau Ceti's orbit, the ship loses all gravity and Ryland floats around. When he manages to stop, he looks outside and notices that there's a Petrova line here too, yet the sun is fine. To his shock, there's another spaceship flying nearby. When this other spacecraft gets too close, Ryland rushes to the pilot's seat and clumsily flies his ship away until he can't see the other one anymore. However, the other spacecraft comes closer again. Ryland keeps flying away, but no matter where he goes, the other spacecraft follows. Eventually, it sends an object toward the Hail Mary, and Ryland is afraid it could be a bomb, so he ignores it. The object bounces off his ship and flies away. The strange ship sends out another one at a slower speed, so Ryland decides to go on a spacewalk to catch it. After putting on the suit and quickly reading the instructions, Ryland leaves the ship in a very clumsy way. After lots of struggle, he manages to jump and grab the object just in time. Back on the ship, he keeps trying to open the object to no avail. A quick scan indicates it's made of a gas named xenon, which makes no sense. At that moment, he remembers the centrifuge system they created for the ship, so Ryland activates it, and the ship starts spinning. After a few seconds, the ship stabilizes, and he has gravity again. He analyzes the object once more, but the scan still says it's made of xenon. He twists the top, and this time he manages to open it, only for Mary to warn him about a foreign presence in the room. Ryland rushes to put the object inside a glove box and takes out a strange sphere with lines. He notices there's another lid and also takes it off to find a smaller sphere with rods. It jumps from his hand and stands on its own, so Ryland compares it to a map of space. He realizes the alien is telling him where it came from, which is even farther than Earth. Ryland rearranges the rods on the sphere to mark Earth's location and sends it back to the alien spaceship. Moments later, the alien sends back a new object that appears to be shaped like a tunnel. Getting the idea, Ryland brings his ship close enough. The alien spacecraft connects both ships by building a tunnel on the spot. Then, Ryland suits up and carefully crosses the tunnel until he reaches the other ship and looks through a window. Suddenly, something moves behind the glass, and Ryland is so startled that he floats back into the tunnel, but he manages to hold on to the wall just in time. Then, he returns to the window and sees an alien hand moving. It shows him some toys it made, like a little Ryland and a model of a ship. Moving the toys, the alien asks Ryland to return to his spacecraft. As soon as Ryland goes back, the alien disconnects the tunnel and makes his ship rotate like the Hail Mary. Then the tunnel is connected again, and when Ryland opens the door, he's hit by tremendous pressure, but now the tunnel has gravity too. This time, he puts up lights as he crosses the tunnel, and when he reaches the window, he shows the alien the model he made of its ship using noodles. The alien comes closer this time, and Ryland discovers that it looks like a walking rock. When he says hi, the alien opens its mouth and makes a scary sound that makes Ryland scream, waving a tool in self-defense. The alien steps away in fear, so Ryland apologizes for his reaction. When he moves his arms or body, the alien imitates him. Soon, they're both doing lots of silly poses. Then, the alien starts poking the window, so Ryland pokes it back. It takes him a while to understand that the alien is pointing behind him because it left another message for him. Ryland opens it and finds a strange collar in it. Using gestures, the alien keeps asking him to take off his helmet, but Ryland refuses. The lights are starting to fail, so Ryland has to go back. However, he stops walking when he realizes that the collar is 2 rings of 8, which represents oxygen. It seems the alien is telling him that there's oxygen in the tunnel. At first, Ryland thinks it's still too risky, but after some hesitation, he finally takes off his helmet, and he's delighted to confirm he can breathe just fine. Later on the ship, Ryland studies the first thing he found in the message and realizes it's the Petrova line. This means the alien is here to study it, because its planet is also having problems with a dying sun. Ryland goes back to the tunnel and says they should work together. But first, they must find a way to communicate. Thinking math is universal, he shows the alien a measuring tape. The alien opens a drawer in the ship's wall, and Ryland gives him the tape, but the alien only plays with it. Next, he shows it a clock, but it doesn't get any kind of reaction. Ryland realizes it's dark inside the alien ship, and the creature doesn't appear to have a face. He theorizes the creature is blind and uses echolocation. After naming the alien Rocky, he returns to his ship to modify the clock, making the numbers pop up. When he shows it to Rocky, it can finally see the numbers and does a little celebration dance. Ryland tries to teach it how to do thumbs up, but the shape of its arm only lets it do thumbs down. Suddenly, Rocky disappears and comes back with another mysterious object. Its parts have symbols, and they rotate, so Ryland concludes it's a clock. Moments later, Ryland returns to the tunnel with his laptop and a microphone. He points at each number and records Rocky naming them. As hours pass, Ryland keeps showing Rocky objects and recording its answers to create a translator of this strange alien language. He also starts recording all his testing, hoping to send everything back to Earth. This alien uses an unknown material to build its thing, so Ryland decides to name it Xenonite. One day, Ryland shows Rocky the astrophage. Rocky immediately recognizes it and says it's very bad, confirming they're here for the same reason. Then, Rocky says it's glad not to be alone anymore. It had a crew, and they also died, just like it happened to Ryland. They agree they'll save the stars together, and Ryland shows Rocky how to fist bump. Using models and the translator, Ryland discusses the data he has so far with Rocky. He also plays with some of the voices in his software until he finds one that Rocky likes. When Ryland leaves the tunnel to sleep, Rocky misunderstands it as death, so Ryland explains the word. Rocky now understands and translates sleep to its language, explaining that in its society they sleep together for protection. It wants to sleep with Ryland too, but he thinks it's too weird. He changes his mind when Rocky says that it watched its crew, and they never woke up. Ryland brings over some stuff to make a bed, and both of them fall asleep by the window. Another flashback shows Eva introducing Ryland to the 3 astronauts chosen for the mission. They told him they wanted something on the ship that would allow them to self-delete after the mission was over. Otherwise, they'd have to die of hunger. And that'd take too long. Ryland showed them how the engine they made worked, and the astrophage managed to melt a ton of metal in seconds. In the present, Ryland is dealing with his confusing memories when suddenly he hears a noise. He opens the door and discovers Rocky has come to his ship using a small pressurized bubble as its personal astronaut suit. It wanders around the ship to admire human technology and scolds Ryland for being messy. Ryland tries to tell Rocky that they should work separately in their respective ships, but Rocky doesn't listen and wants its own room here so they can work together. Ryland complains that Rocky is bossy whenever they're working together, and watching it eat is a very nasty experience. Since Rocky can see through walls and has amazing hearing, Ryland has no privacy or personal space. By discussing the technology behind the ships, Ryland realizes that these aliens don't know about radiation. He explains that radiation killed its crew, and Rocky survived because its workshop was close to the astrophage, which protected it. The duo decides they need astrophage samples, so Ryland disconnects the ships and sends his to the nearest planet. The trip lasts 11 days, so Ryland spends his time showing Rocky recordings of Earth. Rocky shares that it misses its mate, whom it's been together with for 186 years. Another flashback shows Ryland with the team at the ship's bar, but he felt uncomfortable, so he left. When he bumped into Eva, he told her it was strange to see everyone so happy, considering they were flying to their deaths. Eve explained to him that camaraderie allowed the astronauts to deal with the gritty side of their jobs. The duo decided to return to the bar, and Eva even dared to do karaoke. In the present, the ship makes it to the planet, and Ryland is amazed by its colors. He goes on a spacewalk and uses a machine to activate a light that attracts thousands of astrophage, which creates a beautiful glow. Rocky and Ryland discuss name ideas and decide to name the planet Adrian. The samples are taken back to the ship to run some tests. They're shocked to discover that the same amount of astrophage comes to the planet and then leaves it. Another test reveals that there are bacteria mixed with the astrophage, which means there's life on Adrian. Rocky realizes that a being on Adrian is killing the astrophage, like a predator. Keeping the astrophage under control makes it impossible for it to be strong enough to kill the sun. If they catch those predators and take them to their planets, they can save their homes. These bacterial predators are probably in the clouds, where the astrophage reproduces, but the ship wasn't made to enter the atmosphere. Rocky says it can make a chain long enough to collect the bacteria in the clouds, and Ryland compares it to fishing. Since he doesn't have experience as a pilot and has been improvising to fly, he practices for a while to avoid getting the ship too close to the atmosphere. While Ryland practices, Rocky records videos for Earth, but it thinks it's a live broadcast. Ryland explains that a probe will be sent with all their findings later, so Rocky wonders why he can't explain it all when he returns. When Ryland says he'll die here, Rocky refuses to accept it and offers to give him some of its own fuel. It'll make its own trip slower, but this way they both live. Ryland cries and hugs Rocky's bubble in gratitude. Another flashback shows Ryland and Eva having a chat 3 days before the astronauts' departure. Suddenly, the lab blew up and the whole building caught on fire. In the present, Ryland carefully flies the ship as close to the atmosphere as possible and lowers the chain with a probe that starts collecting samples. Once the probe is done, Ryland goes on a spacewalk to bring it back. It's a slow process, so the ship takes some damage from the atmosphere's temperature while it waits. A piece of metal suddenly breaks and hits Ryland, knocking him out. Thankfully, he wakes up quickly, only to discover that the probe is hanging from its chain underneath the ship. The temperature keeps rising, and Rocky says they really need to go, asking Ryland to come back inside and get a new sample later. Ryland refuses to give up and jumps to grab the probe, but he's hit by another loose piece and he gets tangled in the tether. He decides to cut it with a knife and holds on to the ship by hand, moving quickly to finally get back inside. Afterward, the ship flies away from the planet, but the hull is still coming apart and it could explode. Ryland pushes the ship to its limits to make it go as fast as possible, and once they're far enough from Adrian, they finally turn off all the engines. Unfortunately, the ship keeps moving and gets stuck in an uncontrollable spin. Ryland realizes that there's a hole in the tank and they're losing fuel from two containers, so they have to eject them. It takes some effort because of all the shaking, but Ryland manages to press the buttons. As soon as those two containers are gone, the ship flies normally again, although the sudden movement knocks them out. Ryland wakes up and tries to press the centrifugal gravity button, but falls unconscious again. Rocky also wakes up and keeps trying to talk to him. However, the translator isn't working. Feeling desperate, Rocky comes out of its bubble and presses the buttons itself. The ship begins to move more slowly, and the gravity inside becomes stable too. Being outside its bubble is hurting Rocky, but this doesn't stop it from taking Ryland to the medical bay. As the ship's robots take care of its friend, Rocky passes out. Another flashback reveals that the lab blew up because of a mistake while handling the astrophage. The scientist astronaut and his backup were killed, and they didn't have enough time to train a new one, so Eva asked Ryland to go. He didn't want to, and an argument ensued, which got worse when Eva pointed out that Ryland had no family, friends, or even a pet. She gave him 3 hours to reconsider. In the present, Ryland wakes up and follows some stains on the floor that look like Rocky's equivalent of blood. He's relieved to discover that Rocky has returned to its bubble and has been sleeping to recover. He sits next to it so they can sleep together, like the old times. Later, Ryland finds a message that Rocky left on the computer asking him to save their homes. He starts working on the tests and confirms he's acquired the bacteria that eat the astrophage. He names it Taumiba and starts cultivating it inside xenonite containers, mutating it in a way that will make it survive Venus' atmosphere. As days pass, Ryland worries because Rocky doesn't wake up. He keeps talking to it and even hangs encouraging drawings on its bubble. Sometime later, Ryland is napping when he's suddenly awakened by a noise. He's delighted to find Rocky healthy and immediately hugs him. Then, they look at the Taumiba farm, which has created a good amount of the bacteria. This means they can finally go home, and they celebrate by watching clips of fireworks. Rocky puts xenonite around its limbs as special clothing for the occasion. Ryland makes paper hats and gives Rocky a laptop full of human knowledge. He also gives it a stress ball as a souvenir. Rocky feels bad because it doesn't have anything to give him, so Ryland asks to see its ship as a gift. When both spaceships are finally connected again, Ryland wears a suit made of xenonite, and Rocky gives him a tour of its place. As he admires the amazing technology, another memory returns to his mind. After the 3 hours, Ryland told Ava that he wasn't going on the mission. Ava explained how important the greater good was before calling her men. Ryland immediately ran away, but the guards quickly caught up to him and tackled him to inject him with a sedative. It turned out he had been put on the ship by force. In the present, Rocky helps Ryland fix the damage on his ship, so it's finally time to go home. They share a very emotional goodbye in the tunnel and do some silly moves before they go their separate ways. The ships fly in different directions, and Ryland has to get used to being alone again. Moments later, Mary warns Ryland that she's detected contamination on the ship, so he shuts down the engines to investigate. When he checks on the Taumiba, he discovers that it's broken the xenonite containing it. He immediately changes containers and puts all the bacteria in a sealed box, but now he's worried about Rocky because its ship is made entirely of xenonite. If the Taumiba escapes, it'll eat the fuel, and Rocky will be stuck in space. A desperate Rayland calculates how long it'd take him to save Rocky and go home, but unfortunately, he can't do both. Refusing to let his best friend die, Ryland gathers all his research and the bacteria farm and sends them to Earth in probes, like originally planned. Afterward, he makes the ship change routes. A few days later, Ryland finds Rocky's ship and goes on a spacewalk to approach it. He then desperately pounds on the window until Rocky comes to let him in. Many years in the future, the probes land on Earth, and Eva gets to see Rocky in the recordings. The planet is already starting to freeze, but now they can focus on saving it. Meanwhile, Rocky's planet has already been saved, and Ryland has his own house there. He's learned the alien language and can talk to Rocky without needing the translator. One day, Rocky tells him that scientists have finished building a spaceship so he can finally return to Earth. However, he decides to stay and keep working as a teacher for little alien children.
And that's a wrap for today's Rewind.
If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to Cinewind, and turn on notifications so you never miss another deep dive into the worlds of movies, series, and anime. Got a film, show, or hidden gem you want us to cover next? Drop it in the comments below. We read them all. Until next time, keep watching, keep wondering, and let the stories live on. This is Cinewind, signing off.